What is the meaning of life? What is the good life? How should we live? These are some of the most important questions that we all face at some point in our lives. And these are some of the central questions in philosophy. Hi, welcome to my channel Becoming Aware. In this series, we'll be exploring various branches of philosophy, talking about some of the big questions that have been pondered by humankind throughout history. And what better place to start than with the philosophy of happiness? The philosophy of happiness, or hedonism if you will, asks the simple but profound question, what is it that makes life worth living? What is it that makes a life good? Different people have different answers to these questions, but generally speaking, most people would agree that happiness is something that we all strive for. We all want to be happy. And so it seems that the good life is one that is lived happily. But what exactly does that mean? To answer that question, we need to ask ourselves, what is happiness? Unfortunately, there is no easy answer to this question. For some, it might mean living a life free from pain and suffering. For others, it might mean experiencing as much pleasure as possible. Still, others might define happiness in terms of fulfilling one's potential or living a life of virtue. In ancient Greece, the philosopher Epicurus held that the chief good of life was pleasure, but not in the sense of indulging in all kinds of sensory pleasures. For Epicurus, pleasure was whatever alleviated pain, both physical and mental. He believed that the greatest pleasure of all was the absence of pain, that only when we are free from pain can we be truly happy. This view of happiness is known as hedonism. Hedonism is often associated with the ancient Greek philosophers Epicurus and Aristotle, as well as the English philosopher Jeremy Bentham. However, the idea that pleasure is the only thing that matters in life has been criticized by many throughout history. The most famous criticism of hedonism comes from the ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, who said, "If you want to be happy, be. If you want to be happy, don't pursue it." Lao Tzu believed that trying to pursue happiness was actually the cause of unhappiness. And so, the only way to be happy, he said, was to stop trying to be happy. So how then do we go about living a good life? One possible answer is provided by the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, who believed that the good life was one that was lived virtuously. That is, the good life is one that is lived according to virtue. Aristotle's conception of the good life is known as Eudaimonia. Eudaimonia is often translated as happiness, but Aristotle meant something more than just the absence of pain or the experience of pleasure. For Aristotle, eudaimonia was the full flourishing of one's potential. It was the realization of one's true nature. According to Aristotle, we are oikeo by nature, which means that we have a natural tendency to do good and to act virtuously. By following our oikeo, we can flourish and live a life of eudaimonia. And so we must be careful not to let our desires for pleasure or our fears of pain control us. To live a virtuous life, Aristotle said, we must find a golden mean between two extremes. For example, courage is the mean between recklessness and cowardice. By finding the golden mean, we can live a life of moderation and balance, and thus live a life of virtue and happiness. So what does this all mean for us today? What can we take away from the ancient Greeks and their ideas about the good life? I believe that the ancient Greeks had some very wise things to say about how we should live our lives. We live in a time when many of us are constantly bombarded with messages telling us to buy more stuff, eat more junk food, and to generally indulge ourselves more. We are told that we deserve it and that we've worked hard enough, and so now it's time to relax and enjoy ourselves. Now, this might work for a while, but ultimately, I believe it leads to unhappiness. As the ancient Greeks knew, indulging ourselves too much doesn't bring us lasting happiness. Instead, we must find a balance between indulgence and self-control. We must learn to delay gratification and resist temptation if we want to lead happy and virtuous lives. The good life, therefore, is not the life of a hedonist. Rather, it is the life of one who is able to find a balance between pleasure and pain, between indulgence and self-control, and who is able to live a life of virtue and moderation. So in short, as we've explored today, the philosophy of happiness offers us profound insights into what it means to live well. Whether it's through cultivating gratitude, seeking meaningful connections, or understanding our own desires, happiness is a journey, not a destination. If you enjoyed this exploration, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What does happiness mean to you? Let's keep the conversation going. Till next time, remember, happiness is not just a feeling, it's a way of living.